Welcome to the Darkstream. Vox Day. voxday.blogspot.com. And tonight we're talking about band in Australia. So welcome to the Reprehensibles, to the VFM, the Dread Ilk, and the Bears. Appreciate you tuning in tonight. I was a little bit late again. Sorry about that. But as you know, we are rather busy at the moment. But things are going well. Things are proceeding, I think, swimmingly. And I'm hoping to be able to have more to tell you about some of those things fairly soon. Just a few announcements before we get into the subject. For those of you who don't know, the print edition of Alt Hero number 6 is now available. There are, based on the orders I've already seen, there are about 2,300 gold logo editions left. So we just launched it. You know, they'll be gone before the end of the month. So if you're interested in the limited gold logo editions, you might want to check that out. We're also going to get Quantum Mortis number 3 out very soon. 4 is coming very soon as well. The interesting thing is, and also, and this is very topical. We're going to be publishing a new book later this month. It's going to be a really big deal, and you can probably guess who the author might be. And we're really looking forward to that. And yes, of course, we're well aware of the various depublishings and bannings and so forth that have been taking place at Amazon. And of course, we are fully prepared for any such actions on the part of any of the various social media companies, so or retailers. But I'd like to point out, and I'd like to encourage you to keep in mind that if you come directly to work with us, if you support us at Castalia Direct, which is where you can get the print comics and stuff and the print books right away, if you support us at Arkhaven Comics, then we don't have to worry about these bannings. You know, it's not a problem at all. And that's been really important. The way that you guys have been supporting the audiobooks in particular is a game changer. It's a fundamental game changer. Travis asks if I can release the unreleased Psychosonic album. I can't do that because I wasn't involved with that one. That was the third album, like Machine something or other. And other than one or two songs that I contributed to in a very small way, I wasn't really involved. That was just basically Paul and Dan by themselves. And so what I do have is I do actually have the 3 demo songs that we did, plus some other rough cuts. But Paul would never agree to releasing those. Which is kind of funny because I actually do listen to those, a fair amount. Wasn't there a package with the first 6 Alt Hero comics or something? What you're thinking of is the gold logo edition for Alt Hero Q, and those are the first 6 issues. And so those will be going out once all 6 issues of Alt Hero Q are done. We actually anticipate getting the first issue of Alt Hero Q out before the end of the month. BLR 467 says, I hope Sea of Skulls will be available in hardcover at some point. It will be. He just picked up a Throne of Bones from Castalia Direct. That's good to know. Jilly Bear just picked up 3 books directly from Castalia House as well. My husband is thrilled to start A Throne of Bones and the Missionaries. No, Archangel. You think he means the omnibus for Alt Hero? Yeah, the omnibus for Alt Hero number 6 is going to be coming out soon. And you can also pick up the comics at InfoWars. Not all the comics. You know, we've got about 30 some comics out. I think they sell Alt Hero and Chuck Dixon's Avalon. So, yeah, this is not going to be an intellectually demanding stream. You can relax. Tomorrow, and this is the other thing. You know, as usual, I'm completely forgetting to mention the main point that I was planning to get to. Voxiversity is coming back tomorrow. So if you haven't subscribed to Voxiversity yet, you might want to do so. The topic is going to be delving into the socio-sexual hierarchy of the alpha. And we are going to be releasing that video tomorrow. When will Arkhaven start selling groceries? Probably not in the near future. John B says he got all of David the Good's books through Castalia. Actually, we have a new one that we are getting out very, very soon. And so, yeah, so we're excited to get Voxiversity out. We're working with our payment processors to see about getting permission to open up the Voxiversity subscriptions again and the Darkstream subscriptions again, which is a way that you can support this stuff directly if you're interested. Delta Bear says, A Throne of Bones is an excellent read and listen. I finished the audiobook just today. 31 hours. That's a slog. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm definitely slogging on the sequel right now. Nuclear Pizza says, when can we get a Darkstream on the differences between Christianity and Churchianity, provided you are interested? At some point, I'll definitely talk about that at some point. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I'll probably do a Voxiversity on, to be honest. Cassius Andronicus says, I've shown your Voxiversity on rhetoric and dialectic to a few people, and they love them. It's great having those. Yeah, well, what's interesting and what I'm happy about is that now that we have a new producer who is not as completely occupied, and just so you know, he's still involved. He just needed to. The new producer is actually a producer that he hand selected, and so we're going to be putting out at least 3 Voxiversities a month. We're going to be possibly doing more, depending on how quickly I'm able to record them and make sure that they're of the quality that I want them to be. Jilly Bear comments, she can't believe how quickly the hardcover books arrived, ordered Saturday afternoon, and they arrived Tuesday. Yeah, that's the big advantage of if you order from Castalia Direct, then you get the stuff a lot faster. We actually get the stuff listed on there usually within 24 hours of actually submitting the stuff, and you can have it as soon as 2 days from then. We're also working on trying to get them to establish free shipping. JLNC says we need a critique of Game of Thrones and Martin. Yeah, we can definitely do a dark stream of that. And something that we're going to do when we get the subscriptions going again is those who support the Voxiversity and support the Darkstream have the ability to, suggest topics, and I'll address them. I'm not going to commit to addressing any topic because, of course, I'm not interested in allowing anybody to control what I'm talking about. But as long as you're reasonable, as long as it's a topic that I feel that I can reasonably address, I have no problem. Nuclear Pizza says, okay, correction. How much to pay you to do it soon? It's not about that. It's about my mind has to be in the right place. You need to keep in mind that I'm addressing a lot of different topics, nonfiction, and then I'm also writing several different comics, and I'm working on a Sea of Skulls. And so, I can switch gears pretty well, but I have a limited capacity for that. That's why sometimes when I'm on here, I'm just kind of rambling because I'm not really focused on anything in particular. Especially recently, we're working literally every day on the legal dispute with Indiegogo. There's stuff coming and going every day. And so that has to take the priority because it has a major impact on how we operate. And I'm hoping to tell you all about it. I mean, I would love to spend 2 hours, do a Owen style stream, just going into the sheer nonsense that we're dealing with. I did talk about Taleb's Twitter storm or tweet storm. I didn't bother with the mathematics because it wasn't relevant. He has some sort of personal issue involved. He's completely wrong. And I just don't think that, his position and his arguments are up to his usual high standard. And the reason is that he's got an identity issue. Whenever you see people taking strange and inconsistent positions, the first thing that you should look at is what are their identity complications. Now, I am very unusual in not allowing my identity complications to affect my thinking. I just refuse to do that. That's why some people occasionally accuse me of being autistic and so forth, because of my ability to separate my personal feelings and opinions and connections and identity from my observations and logic. So I mean, this is the source of a lot of what about meism. I talk about, like, for example, we had a woman on the stream the other night, and she talked about her experience in the Balkans. And she talked about the way that people who were in mixed marriages and mixed relationships, she talked about the way that those people were either kicked out or killed. And that's normal in history. I mean, if you think about it, where do homogenous nations come from? People sometimes have this idea that all of these people have been entirely separated for all of human history until recently. And it's not the case. People have been traveling, and people have been marrying and capturing and carrying away and raping and being involved with people of other nations from the beginning of time. But when you look at the fact that these homogenous nations exist, you have to ask where they come from. And where they come from is heterogeneous societies, heterogeneous empires. War happens. Daniel Natal has a good point. He says, read Politics by Aristotle. He talks directly about maintaining the cultural cohesion by kicking out the alien and the foreigner. And so, what we are living in now is very, very unusual times, incredibly open times, incredibly unusual times. Feeling Lucky Duck has a good point. What happened to all the people that invaded the UK? None of their DNA is left. I was shocked when I read that. I thought for sure that the Danelaw would show that people had a lot of Scandinavian descent up there. But due to the harrowing of the North, that was almost entirely eliminated. And so, Reprehensible Bear says the melting pot is about to melt. That's correct. And so, and people talk about skin color. They don't understand. Skin color is a superset. Skin color is going to be a part of it, but it's not going to be all of it. And so, that's why the whole concept of white nationalism is so ludicrous. Why not talk about human nationalism? Talking about white nationalism is akin to saying human nationalism. You're talking about an inappropriate set. Yeah, I understand that. I'm not criticizing Taleb's math. Taleb's math is almost certainly correct, but Taleb's math is also almost certainly irrelevant. It is absolutely ludicrous to think that those who do well, that IQ tests are irrelevant in any way. If you know somebody who is at a very high level, and if you know somebody else who's at a very low level, you know that it is, in fact, a reasonable proxy for intelligence. Let's see here. So, honestly, I thought Taleb's entire argument was so stupid and so emotion-based and so obviously tied up in some identity complication that after I read the Twitter stream and I addressed it on the blog, I completely stopped paying attention to it. I really like Taleb. I really think that he is one of, if not the leading public intellectuals of our time. And I strongly suspect that he's going to really regret going down that route. I don't know what brought it on. I don't know what the deal was. But I'm not interested. The whole idea. Here's the thing. I know a number of other people who argue the same sort of thing, not mathematically, but they have exactly the same position. And some of them are actually quite intelligent and score very well on IQ tests. So it's not the usual, I didn't score as well on my SATs, so I'm denigrating all standardized testing. But when you look at those people, in every single case, they have an identity complication that causes them to avert their eyes from the obvious. And so, that is almost certainly what it is. Look, for all his many, many good qualities, Talib's a bit of a hothead. What does that mean? That means he is not dispassionate. He's a passionate person. So he is not going to be dispassionate and clinical about things in the way that others are. I don't know what Talib's identity complication is, but it's there. Let's see here. Okay, Tamiko Anderson says, why do Japanese get offended if you mistake them for Chinese? They are all from the same tribes of people. No, they're not. They're very, very distinct. They are a different tribe. They are a different nation. There's the cultures are very, very different. Pickle Bear says, when Civil War II happens, what will be the big changes for you and the rest of the planet? Well, it's going to completely change global trade, and it's going to completely change the balance of power more than anything. I think that it's going to have more impact in Asia than it does in Europe because, if anything, it's going to free up the nationalists across Europe because the globalist empire that is keeping them down through the military muscle of the USA. And so that's what the biggest change, I believe. Let's see. Nuclear Pizza said, I'm talking with my dad and other family member about moving to Montana wholesale within the next 8 years or so. Reasonable. I think if you're going to do something like that, you should do it a lot sooner. I don't think that... I think things are going to be getting increasingly difficult. Here's the thing. Once you've made the decision to do something like that, just do it now. Putting it off till later is usually not a good idea. Darth Pliskin says, greetings from Finland. Greetings. I've been watching this Darkstream since the very first Periscope tryout. I was pretty bad then, wasn't I? I haven't caught every stream by any means, but it has been great to see you evolve. Forwards. I didn't know that was coming, but yeah, I was pretty bad. Hopefully I can continue to improve. So now let's talk about the banning. So what happened today is that Milo was banned from getting a... let me correct this real quick. Margot would like to point out that he's the one who mentioned that from regarding the Balkans, and he is a dude, by the way. Sorry, but it's actually Margot, two different words, but just so you know, Margot is a female name in English. Sam Sutherland says, what's the most up-to-date code of merit? I have no idea. I honestly haven't paid any attention to that lately. So, Milo was banned from going to Australia, and this is, I think, interesting for two reasons. Number one, that we are seeing the complete abandonment across the entire West of the whole idea that freedom is related to freedom of speech and so forth. Others have been banned. David Icke, I don't know what his name is. Roosh was banned previously. If you recall, a couple of folks have been banned from the UK, such as Michael Savage. And so it's interesting because the media is trying tell us at the same time that what's happening in China with its social credit system, which prevents thousands of people from being allowed to travel. They can't take the train, they can't fly. We're supposed to believe that this is, a totalitarian nightmare that's unthinkable, and yet we're seeing exactly the same thing happen in Australia. We're seeing the same thing happen in England, and we're probably going to see the same thing happen in the US. We're already seeing similar things take place, such as, for example, the unconstitutional laws against the boycott, diversify, and sanction movement that is anti-Israel. And now, just to be clear, I don't support the BDS movement. I publish a number of Israeli authors. I edit a number of books that are written by Israeli authors. So obviously I don't support BDS, or I would not do that. But I am absolutely 100% opposed to these anti-BDS laws in the United States because they are a intrinsic violation of unalienable American rights. And so, when you look at what is happening, you're seeing that you never had, the whole idea of freedom of speech was always BS. It was always a sham. It was always a way of anti-Christian forces attempting to get around the blasphemy laws in order to destabilize the Christian foundation of the West. And so, somebody said Israel has a right to exist. Israel does have a right to exist. No question. Israel has a right to defend itself too. But Israel does not have a right to tell Americans what they can say. Israel does not have a right to tell Americans what they can buy. And so it's a massive, massive mistake on the part. And just so you understand, I'm not the only person who feels this way. There are Israelis who say the same thing. I asked Martin Van Creveld about it, and he thought it was just utterly stupid because, as Patriot 95 says, America has a right to exist too. And Americans have different rights by virtue of their history, by virtue of their traditions, by virtue of their Constitution. And so you have to stand up for and defend those rights. And the other thing that was interesting about Milo's banning is that it was done, if you read the reports, it was done on the basis of claiming that he was an anti-Semite. Now, this is ridiculous. I've known Milo for a couple of years. I have never, ever known him to even have any interest in the subject. He'll talk all day about feminism. He'll talk all day about lots and lots of various other subjects, but we have never once discussed anything relating to Israel or to the Jewish diaspora or the Holocaust or anything else. So I mean, I know why they tried to hang it on him, because he made a payment of $14.88 to someone, and they claimed, oh, this proves that he's an anti-Semite. No, it proves that he's a provocateur who is happy to push people's buttons. That's it. But so why do they do it? This is the interesting thing. I have no interest or concern with defending Milo against that charge, because it is so obviously ludicrous. But why does he? Why would they make that charge? Why would they lead with that charge? And the answer is very simple. Anti-Semitism is the new racism. The globalist left was very successful in causing people to run away from accusations of racism. Very, very successful. I mean, to the extent that, even those who would tend to qualify as being proud racists by any standard are going to run away from it. And yet, they haven't been anywhere nearly as successful with, or let me back up. So what they've been able to do is they've been able to eliminate the ability to criticize or politically oppose black people in the United States and in the UK in particular. So everybody is terrified of it. I mean, it doesn't matter if every interracial rape in the United States is all in one direction. It doesn't matter what the scientists say about IQ and cognitive capacity. It doesn't matter that there is a disproportionate number of athletes of a certain race in certain sports. No matter what you do, you can't say anything for fear of being called racist. So, I mean, racist, remember, is an invented word. It hasn't even been in the language very long. And so when you look at how effective that rhetoric has been, because rhetoric's all about persuasion and inflaming the emotions, affecting the emotions. So racism is one of the most effective rhetorical terms ever designed. Purple Echo says, Vox just dropped over $300 on books at Castelli House. The website could use an update. Did you sell out Alt Hero number 3 Gold Edition? I think so. I'll have to look into that. We'll get back to that later. Anyhow, I'm going to ignore the comments for a while here. I mean, go ahead and put the comments and the super chats in, but I'm going to stay on topic here, and then I'll hit all the super chats before we go. So, racism is this incredibly effective rhetorical term, and it has insulated a population from legitimate criticism. And so, obviously, what has happened is that the Jewish nation realized how effective that is. They realized how useful it would be to be able to avoid being criticized. But it's not working. It's not going to work, because the big difference is that, just like with fourth generation warfare, when you have an imbalance of power, the effectiveness of the rhetorical attacks are going to be different. For whatever reason, people have a tendency to feel sorry for blacks. Whether it's because of slavery, whether it's because of lower average IQs, whatever, it doesn't matter why. They are not perceived as being on the same level. That's not true of Jews. Jews control the media. Proudly. They'll proudly tell you about it. They, until very recently, completely controlled Hollywood. I don't know if that's necessarily true anymore due to the Chinese factor. And then you look at Wall Street and so forth, and they're very influential there. And now they're very influential in the federal government as well. And apparently in state governments, because anti-BDS laws have been passed in 26 state governments. So what we're seeing is the fact that the anti-Semitic rhetoric has largely failed. It worked really well with the boomers. It worked reasonably well with Generation X. It's not working as well with the millennials, and it's not working at all with Generation Z. The further in time we get away from the Holocaust, the less people care about it. And the less European the West is, the less people care about it. And that's why it's been so interesting to see the way that the entire united uniparty, the elite of both the Democratic and the Republican Party, the insiders in the establishment, the outsiders like Trump, all of them have united against Representative Omar from Minneapolis, the Somali woman. All of them have united against her. And what has happened? Did it destroy her? No. She's becoming more popular than ever. She is now more significant than the Cortez woman. She's not, and so what you're seeing is the failure of the rhetorical term anti-Semite to take down a major public figure despite the united attempts of the political and the media class to do so. So this is very significant. This is a very big deal. And so I think that we're going to see the term anti-Semite and anti-Semitic become less and less effective. I don't worry about it at all. They used to try to pin it on me, and I wasn't worried about it in the slightest because, I don't worry about things that aren't true. They also said that I had been married and divorced several times. They said that I'm gay. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. They said I was a white supremacist and so forth. And so it's interesting to see how these rhetorical terms either work or don't work. And now, again, I don't think that it's good at all for the United States to have Muslim immigrants in office. But I predicted that this was going to happen because we knew that the strategy of bringing in other immigrant groups and other identities was eventually going to cause rivalry between those identity groups. And so, what we're seeing there is the fact that these other identity groups, like the Chinese, like the Somalis, like the Hispanics, they don't have the same susceptibilities to the rhetorical attacks of the immigrant Jewish population that historically dominated the Democratic Party and is now trying to, and now has become more influential in the Republican Party. All right, so let's have a look at the super chats here. Helicopter Bear says, for those who have hopes about the rise of white identity, read about decolonization. The Iberian Portuguese were slaughtered while their African-born co-nationals didn't do much. That better wake you up. That's true. Live Free or Die Bear says, captivated and stealthy super chat. Thank you. Duralex Sedlex says, I doubt accusations of racism are going to last long after the Chinese plans in Africa fail to go as expected. Africa wins again. Somebody's read Law Dog. And they deploy the genetic weapons. Yeah, that's where it's going to get pretty crazy. Marie Gollet says, probably not. I don't know what that is in reference to, but okay. Let me see, make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, the Dashing Rose said, why do the Jews have a victim complex? Because they're, number one, because they're outnumbered. Number two, because it's useful. I'm going to get into more detail on this in a future Darkstream, but the most interesting thing about the whole concept of anti-Semitism is that I had always assumed that the primary problems between the Jewish nation and the European nations was Christianity. But that's not true. I was talking to a Israeli reader about this, and he pointed out that their main problem with Western civilization is less Christianity and more the Greco-Roman legacy. And he was absolutely right, because if you look at the wars they had with the Hellenes and the Romans, those wars were much more vicious. And up until the Holocaust, which again was not a Christian-driven genocide, were considerably worse and considerably more destructive to the Jewish nation than all of the medieval Christian pogroms and whatever combined. And so, so the gulf between Western civilization and the Jewish nation is much wider on a foundational structural level than most people realize. And so, and that's where the conflict comes from, because, Yoram Hazony, the author of the very good The Virtue of Nationalism, talks about how the empire is dominated by a ruling nation. Now, the U.S. empire is obviously dominated at the moment by the Jewish nation. Fine, typical in terms of late-stage empire, but you have to look at what usually happens. You have to look at the pattern, the historical pattern, and the trend. And again, I don't have an opinion on this. I'm simply pointing out what has happened over the course of history and where we are in those trends today. Now, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I have no idea. But I can reach certain, anyone can reach certain logical conclusions based on what has gone before, what has happened before. This is a useful task for anybody. I would hope that the ruling elite is paying attention to it as well, because then maybe they can make less stupid choices than other elites have made before them. Peter Bedrosian says, just bought Conservative. Keep up the great work and challenging my preconceived notions. Thank you. I will try to. Love to the Dread Ilk, VFM, Evil Legion of Evil, Reprehensibles, and Bears. So the thing that I get a little frustrated with at times when we talk about these things is folks get a bit confused as to the difference between observation and opinion and advocacy. And, if I'm advocating something, I will tell you, okay? I'm not going to try to slyly, stick things in, I will tell you flat out, I think that if the United States empire is going to survive, it needs to withdraw from Europe. It needs to withdraw from its whole global policeman thing. And it needs to start mass repatriations. All right, that's what I think. Now, do I believe that is going to happen? No, I don't believe it's going to happen. Why not? Because I don't believe it's politically possible. I don't think that there are enough people who believe that is the right thing to do. So this isn't rocket science. If you look at people that are overweight and at risk of dying of heart disease, they know perfectly well that they should stop feeding their face, they should lose 50 pounds, and they will be better off for it. And yet they don't. So that's the situation that we're in, which means that the U.S. empire is going to collapse sooner or later. Probably not tomorrow. Probably not next year. When people say, when do you think it's going to happen? I have said for the last 15 years, probably in the 2033 timeframe. So now that doesn't mean that the entire land mass of the United States is going to vanish and that the entire population is going to disappear. It's just going to change. When the Roman Empire declined and fell, it took a long time for that to happen. And then eventually we saw the rise of the European nations. The same thing is going to happen in the USA. Different nations are going to homogenize and develop. We don't know how many. And we don't know what shape they're going to take. Marie Gollet says, regarding the U.S. empire, it's already dented yet not broken. That's correct. It hasn't broken yet. It is still the primary military power on the planet, but that is rapidly in the process of changing. Bear Brain Schemer says, been watching a number of your streams and appreciate your perspective. Thanks. Trying to find my faith at this crazy time and don't like church. Where should I start? Start a Bible study with like-minded people. And pray. Ask God to tell you what to do. He'll do it. 2033 because he placed a bet. No, it was based on the average lifespans of currencies. I think that when the US dollar goes, the empire goes. If you look at the way in which the debasement of the currency and the collapse of the currency tends to go hand in hand with moral degradation, with heavy immigration, with foreign elites. These things all tend to be connected. We talked about that with regards to the crisis of the Third Empire back in a couple days ago. Now the the Roman Empire survived that because it was taken over by a tyrant named Diocletian, who was able to keep it together by violence and strength of will. That's not going to happen in the US. We don't have a structure, a political structure that will permit that. You know, the political system is way too, there's the civilian leadership has too much power. It is too divided. And so I just don't see that happening. You know, people worry about, a dictator. I don't believe there's going to be a dictator. I think that breakup is vastly more likely. Let's see. I want to ask the guy who said he just bought a bunch of books. Actually, I can check real quick just to make sure that I have the right. Are you talking about hardcover or are you talking about digital? I'm guessing you're talking about or print or digital. I'm guessing you're talking about print would be my guess. I'll check real quick. Okay. Yeah, definitely talking about the print. Yeah, that, just so you understand, that site is not one that we control. That's actually created and run by our distributor and printer. And so that's why it's so fast. But, you know, I mean, when we were actually the first to seriously start using it, and it barely functioned. And so it does need a tremendous amount of improvement. If you have any ideas, please feel free to email us. And we appreciate the support. It's very, very important to us that people do buy the print books from Castelia Direct rather than always going to Amazon. We're working hard. I mean, they do a great job on the fast delivery. We would like to see them offer some sort of free delivery option, and we are lobbying very hard for that, and they will have it eventually. And they will have it in Europe and the UK, but we don't know when. It's supposed to happen this year. So, softball question of the night: ever get into Magic the Gathering back in the day? I had like a starter deck, and my friend and I played it for about 2 days and then lost interest in it. You know, we saw the both of us, you know, being game designers, found it very easy to find the way in which that the game was unbalanced, and so it really wasn't that fun. Do you think baptism is a requirement for returning to Christ? I think yes. I think you should. You know, there's no harm in being baptized twice. We're told to be baptized, so I see no reason not to do it. So, in fact, you know, I went through a public ceremony of baptism as a preteen, but I was baptized again at 27 at my request. So, let's see. I rewatched the JF evolution debate. Issue, I noticed that you were comparing the fixed mutations of chimps, total mutation differences to humans should be fixed. No, I mean, I may have misspoken, but no, I wasn't. I've been watch the recap, and you'll see that that's not the case. Where can I buy your comics? Well, it's easy. Go to archavencomics.com if you want ebooks. And you can actually, if you see the comics there on archavencomics.com, you can either buy the digital comics there, which come in high-res CBZ format and Kindle format. And then you can also, the links to the print comic are there. Although I need to add the link to Alt Hero 6 on the print store. So you can find, if you go to archavencomics.com, you can find everything you want. Hey Vox, do you think time is more valuable than money? Yes. Yes, I do. I don't trust money. Money is a tool and money is necessary to do certain things, but money is also corrupting. And it leads to tremendous problems. You know, my family actually has a history of being very, very wealthy about every other generation. And then somehow losing it one way or another. And, you know, and when I say very, very wealthy, I mean like, you know, in the 100 million range. But it's causes problems, tremendous problems. And so there's a good reason, and you know, the wisdom of the Bible in pointing out that you can see the wisdom of the Bible if you look at the way that the love of money, you know, really is the root of an awful lot of evil, if not all evil. Cinnamon Bear says, I haven't read for a while. Where's the best place to start for an easy, good read? I want to learn, but also be entertained. Well, if you want really easy, pick up the Alt Hero comics. But it just depends. If you're just looking for entertainment, if you like science fiction, my Quantum Mortis novels are good. There's also the Thousand Worlds novels by, if you like military fiction, War Dogs Incorporated is good. If you like fantasy, I would recommend John C. Wright's Swan Knight Saga. Wolfgang Sula says, Hi Vox, what are the key ingredients to a successful marriage? The first ingredient is genuinely liking the other individual as a person. It's good to be attracted to them. It doesn't matter that they're like the most attractive person that you've ever met. It's good if the two of you like to be around each other in a way that doesn't relate to the vagaries of passion. You know, I once said something about my wife being, you know, comfortable like an old shoe, and somebody was taking a little bit of exception to that, and my wife said, "You have no idea how difficult it is to get him to get rid of his old shoes." You know, she understood that was a pretty serious compliment. But possibly the most important thing is that you're more or less on the same page with regards to the larger issues of life. Artillery Bear says, Vox, I'm about 4 episodes behind. Wanted to pop in while you were live and say keep up the great work. Well, catch up soon. P.S. I'm a quarter of the way through Throne of Bones, and it's outstanding. I'm glad to hear it. You know, if you guys like A Throne of Bones, it sounds like a number of you are reading it and listening to it. I'd really encourage you to put some reviews up on Amazon. You know, they do make a difference. It helps for people to understand that, hey, this stuff is actually worth reading. Anyhow, thanks for stopping in, Artillery Bear. The James Fox Higgins Show. Yeah, I got to mention that I actually watched your trailer today. That was really good. Just for those of you who don't know, James Fox Higgins is doing an ongoing Jordanetics YouTube series. He wanted to. He's not a fan per se. He's somebody who is curious about whether I was telling the truth or Jordan Peterson was, and so he's going through and analyzing both of our books. I think at this point he is beginning to see things my way a bit after he's done the 6th episode. But, you know, we'll let him, you know, he hasn't finished the whole thing, so we'll let him reach his own conclusions. Anyhow, you're welcome. He says, here's a tip with kind regards. Love to get you on for an interview sometime. Many questions, not just about Jordan B. Peterson. I don't really do interviews. with new media, but in light of, most part of it is because it's a really bad idea in general, because all that ever happens is that I get people in trouble. I mean, literally, people who interview me get fired, that sort of thing. So, but when you finish, what I would suggest is that when you finish the series, why don't I appear on your show, and you can also offer the same opportunity to Jordan Peterson, and talk to us about your conclusions and whatever questions you and your viewers have come up with. I think that would actually be interesting. Marie Gollet is loving the stream. Thanks. And Jimmy James C says, "What are your thoughts on sea levels rising in relation to climate change?" I haven't looked into it enough to have an opinion. I am very dubious about anthropogenic global warming. As far as I can tell, it looks more like we're in for a periodic spell of global cooling based on the sun spots and whatnot, but we'll see. Thoughts on Scipio Africanus, better general than Hannibal? No, I don't believe so. He had a lot more resources at his disposal. Great general, but Hannibal is one of the all-time greatest. So, right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in tonight. We've finished our hour. I apologize if this was a bit rambling, but I did warn you at the beginning, so I hope you'll understand. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Darkstream. I'm Vox Day.